It's Marlon Speaks Live, yeah, I'm saying what they hide. History uncensored, let the real survive. Yeah, it's truth over comfort, I don't pick no side. If it shake the room a little, let the truth collide. Cause it's Marlon Speaks Live, no script, no disguise. I don't sell no lies, just to monetize. Cause the past still breathing and it never dies. Yeah, it's Marlon Speaks Live, now the truth will rise. Yo, it's Marlon.
Welcome back, another episode of Marlon Speaks Live. Man, I know it's been a while. It's Black History Month, and I definitely wanted to come on here and share some Black history that every race can celebrate. You know, this whole notion of what it means to be Black, what it means to be white, what it means to be Asian, and so on and so forth. Man, I just got a whole new understanding from. Now, I love historical history type documentaries about human evolution, right? So I was just watching this video earlier when I was at work about how race developed, how it even, and why, you know, and what's the reasons for it. And I learned so much watching this documentary, and it really gave me so much insight. Now, I watched about two of them. Now, this one that I watched, I'm just going to share just a little clip of this one. And then what I want to do is just talk a little bit about this, and I'm not going to be all day. Just watching what's going on in our country, in America, it's so sad to see all of this stuff playing out behind genetic differences that were needed for people to survive. You know, so what I'm about to share is basically why white people came, or how they came about, and where we all come from. And I just want y'all to see this, man, and just be able to understand, like, our variations in, like, what make us different are so small. But the thing underneath it all is all of us. And these differences that came about, trust me, without them differences, you wouldn't be alive still. But without you being Black, and without everybody being Black in the first place, none of us would exist. So look, y'all check this out, man.
Before anyone was white, before anyone was pale, before skin colour became something humans even thought about, we were all dark. Every single one of us. Your ancestors, my ancestors, everyone's ancestors. Around 300,000 years ago, in the sun-baked landscapes of Africa, modern humans emerged, and they all had one thing in common: dark brown skin, rich in melanin, perfectly adapted to the environment that created them. This wasn't random. Evolution doesn't do random when survival is on the line. Dark skin was the solution to a very specific problem, one that would kill you if you got it wrong: the African sun. Picture the world your earliest ancestors inhabited. Not the Africa of today, though parts of it remain similar, but the Africa of the Middle Pleistocene. Grassland stretching to the horizon, broken by scattered acacia trees and rocky outcrops. The equatorial sun beating down with an intensity that's hard to comprehend if you've never experienced it. At noon, there's almost no shade. The sun is directly overhead, and UV radiation pours down like an invisible fire. This is where humans evolved, not in forests where thick canopies filter sunlight, not in temperate zones where clouds provide regular relief, but in the open savannas of equatorial Africa, where our ancestors had left the trees behind and were learning to walk upright across exposed grasslands. That upright posture changed everything. When our ape ancestors walked on all fours, most of their body surface was shaded by their own torso. The sun hit mainly their backs, and thick body hair provided additional protection. But when our ancestors stood up and lost most of their body hair, probably to improve cooling efficiency through sweating, they exposed massive amounts of skin directly to the sun. This created a crisis. UV radiation isn't just uncomfortable, it's destructive at the molecular level. It breaks chemical bonds, it damages DNA. Most critically for our ancestors, it destroys folate, a B vitamin absolutely essential for human survival. Folate does something remarkable. It protects DNA during cell division, especially during the rapid cell division that happens when embryos are forming. Without adequate folate, neural tubes don't close properly, spines don't form correctly, pregnancies fail. Even in adults, folate deficiency causes anemia, weakness, the inability to heal wounds properly. In the harsh environment of prehistoric Africa, folate deficiency was a death sentence. The African sun destroys folate. Studies show that just a few hours of intense UV exposure can degrade folate levels in the bloodstream by more than half. Now imagine you're an early human spending 12 hours a day outside, hunting, gathering, travelling between water sources. Without protection, your folate reserves would be depleted constantly. Enter melanin, nature's perfect sunscreen. Melanin is a pigment produced by specialized cells called melanocytes in the deepest layer of your skin. It comes in different forms, but the most important for UV protection is eumelanin, the brown-black pigment that gives skin its darker tones. Eumelanin acts like billions of tiny umbrellas scattered throughout your skin, absorbing and dissipating UV radiation before it can penetrate to the deeper layers where blood vessels and DNA-rich cells reside. The more melanin you have, the more protection. Dark brown skin can absorb and neutralize UV radiation dozens of times more effectively than pale skin. It's not perfect, nothing in evolution is, but it's remarkably effective. Effective enough that early humans with darker skin could spend entire days under the African sun without suffering folate depletion. This wasn't just advantageous, it was mandatory. In the environment where humans evolved, dark skin was the difference between successful reproduction and genetic extinction. Women with insufficient melanin would have higher rates of pregnancy failure and birth defects. Children with pale skin would have been more susceptible to sunburn, skin damage, and the long-term effects of UV exposure. Adults would have suffered folate deficiency and its cascade of health problems. Natural selection doesn't mess around with problems this fundamental. Any genetic variation that increased melanin production would spread through the population rapidly. Within just a few thousand generations, basically nothing in evolutionary time, all humans living in equatorial Africa would have had dark skin. And they all did. Every single anatomically modern human who lived in Africa before the Great Migrations had dark brown skin. The genetic evidence is unambiguous. The variations in genes that control melanin production, the mutations that would later create lighter skin, none of them existed yet. Or if they did exist as random mutations, they were selected against, eliminated because they reduced fitness in the African environment. Think about what this means. For the first 240,000 years of modern human existence, maybe longer, skin color wasn't variable. It wasn't a marker of different populations or different groups. Every human who looked at another human saw someone whose skin was roughly the same shade as their own. Dark skin wasn't a trait that needed explaining. It was just what humans looked like. Life in those early African populations was hard but manageable. Your ancestors weren't struggling against their environment, they were adapted to it. They could hunt during the heat of the day without suffering sun damage. They could gather plant foods in exposed areas without worrying about UV radiation destroying essential nutrients in their bodies. Women could carry pregnancy successfully, producing healthy children with properly formed nervous systems. The archaeological evidence from this period shows humans thriving. Not just surviving, but developing increasingly sophisticated technologies and social structures. They were making specialized tools, hunting large game, gathering diverse plant resources. They were creating art, at least by 100,000 years ago, and probably earlier. They were developing the complex social networks that would eventually allow them to spread across the entire planet. And through all of this, through all these advances in technology and culture, their skin remained consistently dark. Because in Africa, under that intense equatorial sun, dark skin was simply what worked. But skin color does more than just protect folate. It's a balancing act, a compromise between competing needs. Because while UV radiation is dangerous, it's also essential. Humans need sunlight to produce vitamin D, a crucial nutrient for bone development, immune function, and dozens of other physiological processes. UV radiation hitting skin triggers a chemical reaction that synthesizes vitamin D. In equatorial Africa, this was never a problem. The sun is so intense that even heavily pigmented skin produces adequate vitamin D. Your dark-skinned ancestors got all the vitamin D they needed despite the UV-blocking properties of their melanin. The sun was strong enough to penetrate even nature's best sunscreen. This is the key point. In the environment where humans evolved, dark skin represented the optimal balance. Maximum protection from UV damage, but still enough UV penetration to maintain vitamin D production. It was the Goldilocks solution. Not too much UV getting through, not too little. Just right. Your earliest ancestors didn't think about any of this, of course. They didn't know about melanin or folate or vitamin D. They just lived under the African sun, generation after generation, shaped by forces they couldn't see or understand. But those forces were real, and they were powerful. They wrote the first chapter of human skin color in dark brown pigment. Then, around 60,000 years ago, some of those dark-skinned Africans did something unprecedented. They left. Small groups, probably just a few hundred individuals at first, crossed from Africa into the Arabian Peninsula and beyond. They carried with them all the genetic and cultural adaptations that had made them successful in Africa, including their dark skin. They didn't know it yet, but they were carrying an adaptation that was perfect for Africa and increasingly problematic for everywhere else they were about to go. The story of how human skin color diversified, how some populations became pale while others remained dark, starts with this migration. With dark-skinned people walking into environments where darkness itself would become a liability. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. For now, rest in this knowledge that the deepest, oldest human adaptation, the one we all carried for hundreds of thousands of years, was dark skin. Rich, melanin-filled, sun-adapted, dark brown skin. Before we were anything else, before we were diverse, before we were scattered across the world, we were all dark. All children of the African sun, all carrying the same protective pigment our ancestors needed to survive in the place where humanity was born. That darkness isn't a variation or a deviation, it's the original human condition, the baseline from which everything else emerged, and in its own way, that's beautiful.
I'm gonna stop it right there. So yeah, so I'm gonna add the link to this documentary. I'm gonna add the link to this documentary in the description, and I want y'all to go check it out. It's like a 2-hour long video, over 2 hours long, and you're gonna need a lot of time to check it out. So I suggest, if y'all got a day job, turn this video on while you're at work, zone out, you will enjoy it. I'm going to add the link, and then I'm going to elaborate on a lot of what this video goes on to explain. Now, what this video goes on to explain is how and why white skin developed, or lighter skin, even the Asian. It's another video that they made on this channel, and it explains how the Asians became lighter skin. But they go into it a little bit on this video, but on the Asian one, they kind of tell you how they even got their eyes, why they got their eyes. It's real informative. If you into stuff like this, like me, to kind of, because me learning this kind of stuff, it kind of overrides all this bull crap that you see about race, with the politics and all of this stuff. And it just kind of lets you know how crazy people are based off of how we look. It lets you know how retarded all these people are. All of them. It lets you know, like, damn, these people have really lost their minds. And learning something like this, for me, it keeps me grounded, keeps me focused on what's really important. You know what I'm saying? Because what's going on right now is nothing short of something like the Civil War time, where people hate each other based off of how they look. And if we don't get to some point of educating ourselves on who we really are, all of us, and how we are all interconnected, we might lose more than just this country, because the whole world seems to be practicing this to a certain degree. So now that we have knowledge of who we are, we have science, we have biology, we can know exactly where we come from. There's no excuse to still be holding on to these old lies, about humanity. And so, like I said, I'm gonna add the link to that in the description. I'm doing it right now. Let me do this before I forget. Yeah, I want you guys to go over here and really, if you got some time, you're gonna need a lot of time to, you're gonna need a whole lot of time. Hold on, let me add this link. Yeah, you're gonna need at least a couple hours to watch this video. It's like 2 hours and 20 minutes long. So y'all gonna need a lot of time to watch this video in its entirety. But what it goes on to explain, I could tell y'all a little bit about how I interpret it, is we all absorb UV rays with our skin. And them UV rays makes vitamin D. Vitamin D is used to absorb calcium. So without proper vitamin D, we don't absorb calcium, which makes our bones weak, which our babies don't develop right. Even women have real hard pregnancies that women have if they have low vitamin D. So what ended up happening to the first wave of Africans who went to Europe, of course, they didn't know that their skin wasn't suited for that cold weather and that environment with low sun. A lot of the women were having childbirth, like they were dying, having babies, and the babies were dying too. And what that did was it was so many of them dying, it created what they call natural selection. So certain people that survived, they were the most advantageous, and over generations, certain genes developed that made certain people lighter. And that lighter gene was necessary to be able to absorb vitamin D, the UV rays, better. So white people are really white so they can absorb the low UV rays that's in that part of the world. So basically, all of us are suited to our environment. That's exactly why we all look the way we look. And natural selection, along with, get this, agriculture, So this is what how agriculture played a part in white people becoming white. So around the time when humans started to farm, that took the nutrient rich meats that black people that the people there would eat when they were hunter gatherers. They ate a lot of meat. So in eating that meat, they still had the essential vitamins that they needed, the vitamin D that was in the meat, because that's the only place you can get vitamin D is eating meat. So they stopped eating meat, and that's when they got real sick. So that sped up the pressures that was needed for natural selection to create, to that gene, that light gene that had kind of developed over a few thousand years during a hunter-gatherer time. It sped up once they started doing agriculture, once they started doing, farming. So the introduction of agriculture, along with that gene being developed by natural selection, it sped up the process. So basically, all the farming that was done, if you were a farmer in Europe at that time, you most likely was going to become white. So that's why they still have pockets of people, like the Inuit people of Greenland. They still have dark skin because they still eat meat. They still eat a whole lot of meat. So that's kind of how, if it was pockets of people that kept their color in them colder regions, that was how they was able to keep their colors by eating a diet that was very rich in vitamin D. So yeah, this genetic transformation that happened, it was necessary. If they had not had that transformation to make their skin lighter, they would not have been able to absorb the UV rays that created vitamin D. So that was fascinating to me to hear that and to know that. And then the crazy part about it, I'm listening to this documentary, right? And they going on to explain how the Native Americans, once they came over to this part of the world, that they actually reversed and got darker. So they turned dark. So this same natural selection process works in reverse. Because I was wondering that. I'm like, I'm wondering like, so if this works where black people could turn white, can white people turn black? Over thousands of years, it can and will happen. You put a certain group of people who's light in an area where it's a lot of sun, they will eventually turn back dark. I don't know if that's the case with Europeans, but it was the case with the Asians, because the Native Americans were actually Asians. So, but yeah, that their gene turned them back dark once they came to this part of the world and went south, like South America. I think they was called the Amazons. Yeah, I believe they were known to be real dark. So yeah, this stuff to me is fascinating. I just felt like I needed to share this because anytime I turn on anything right now, especially, it's ICE, it's so many people trying to cope with this misinformation and these lies about what race mean. And look, I suggest y'all go deep. I'm gonna actually share another video about matter of fact, I'm gonna share a little bit about this one. The differences between Africans and Europeans, that right there, this video, I'm gonna add the link to this one as well, because this right here, this needs to be studied. Every person in every place where it's so-called diversity needs to study this, because this right here, this video kind of break down all the differences of Africans and Europeans. And it's another video that they got on this channel where they break down the differences in Asian and European cultures. And so basically what it all boiled down to is agriculture. Agriculture played such a major role, agriculture and geography. But the agriculture actually is attached to the geography, because you can't plant certain crops in certain regions. So they kind of go hand in hand. So the differences between, like I said, the actual geography and the agriculture reflect in a lot of the way that the people behave, a lot of the way that the people think. You know, in Europe, you pretty much had a bunch of agriculture that was real easy to produce, where one person or one family could produce a whole lot, and that enabled that one, those individual families to change the fortunes of their whole, lineage. It also kind of ushered in land ownership as well. And so when you have crops like wheat and barley and those crops that grew so in such an abundance, you can have a surplus. And that surplus enabled the European societies to create what they call specialists, people that did not farm, people that could focus on whatever they wanted to focus on, whether it's politics, religion. It allowed for people to not have to toil and try to feed themselves all day. So those rich crops, it gave the Europeans a whole leg up, and along with the domesticated animals. Now they said out of all the continents, Europe had 13 out of the 14 domesticated animals that you could have. Africa had 0. Africa has 0 domesticated animals. Europe's climate, going all the way to Asia, was temperate. See, Europe and Asia, it went from east to west, which is latitude. And Africa goes from north to south, which is longitude. Meaning Africa has a whole bunch of different climate zones on the continent. It's not just linear, just going straight across like Europe. And that difference alone is what allowed for everything that happened in Europe to spread evenly. All the different ideas, different farming techniques, all the domesticated animals, all the different ideas that even start coming up out of Europe. They said Europe hit the lotto as far as, the best place you could be for crops, for certain crops. Those crops that Europe had, you can't plant none of them in Africa. Then it's a bug that would kill domesticated animals. If you try to bring them into Africa, they would kill the dang animals. So I think that's even to this day, I didn't notice that it's a bug that will put animals to sleep and kill them. So it's so many different things. Even the diseases are different. The diseases that Europeans caught, they built up immunity for. The diseases that's in Africa, they keep catching them. They don't build up immunity. Like malaria, you don't build up immunity with these diseases. You can catch them 100 times in your lifetime. So just those differences alone, it kind of changed how the people thought. You know, in Africa is a more spiritual thing that people think of. In Europe, everything began to be competitive because everybody had everything, right? So that's what made all these little nations in Europe start to compete so much, because it was so much of an abundance of everything that they had. Even well, and the difference between Asia and Europe, a lot of it is the same thing: the geography and the agriculture. Rice, which is the main crop in Asia, it required a very big collaborative network. It required a bunch of cooperation. It required a bunch of people working together. The water management that it took to make the rice, the whole thing, it needed to be a well-oiled machine with a bunch of different people cooperating. It was not like Europe where you can have one person. Like I said, you got the horses, you got the oxen who can, you could plow a lot of field with these domesticated animals. They didn't have those domesticated animals in Asia either. So it required more manpower to pull off what they was pulling off. But what they created in Asia, it was a more co-op, and that's pretty much how the societies behave. The society in Asia behave as one big co-op where they have to work together. To this day, that's basically socialism. And they give up individualism for the greater good in Asia societies. In European society, it's based on individualism. Even the religion is individualism. It's about saving yourself, with the Christianity. It's about being the best you that you can be. Whereas in Asia is more centered around you playing the best role in this society that you could play. So all of these different ways of thinking that we developed into actually came from our environment, and the foods that we ate actually, of course, come from our environment, our geography. So pretty much we are all a reflection of the lands that we ended up inhabiting. We couldn't be who we are without the actual land. The land made us. We didn't make the land. The land created us. That's basically what I got out of these documentaries. And it was fascinating to hear that. And it really made me look at myself a whole lot different, to know these things. And then it's like you turn on the news or you turn on YouTube and you see people bickering and beefing over nothing. Over absolutely nothing. When you really put it in its proper context, these people are arguing, and ICE agents, stalking their brother. Don't even notice your brother. Your skin only look different only because of vitamin D. So you could take in vitamin D easier. That's it. You're not superior. And it's like, man, just all these different ways of us thinking and behaving, it's all from our environment that we were forged in for 10s and 20, 30, 40, 50,000 years, 100,000 years to end up looking the way we look, which we all used to look the same. Like this documentary said. That's why I wanted to stop it right there, because I didn't want to go too far into it, but I did want to discuss that documentary myself, to put it in my own words so y'all can see what type of information I gathered from it. And then y'all take the time to go over there to, I think it's called Sleepy Time. It's called something Sleepy Time. And I don't know, it didn't put me to sleep. But that's why I suggest watching it while you at work. You moving around anyway. You can zone out. It get you to lunchtime. It'll get you to your break and all of that. But yeah, man, look, y'all check these documentaries out, man. Hold on, let me add the link to that other one right now. Yeah, both of these are great watches. Y'all can watch these. It'll take up half of your day at your job. You check these out. It'll take up half of your day at your job. You can zone out to lunch, listening to these. And, you know, hopefully you look around and start, like I did earlier, start looking at your coworkers with a totally different glaze and like, wow, look at that person that needed this vitamin D, that needed start looking at them a whole lot different, man. I was looking around at my coworkers today like, damn, he looked like that just because he had to. Like, it was out of necessity. We all look the way we look out of necessity. It wasn't because we wanted to look the way we look. It was not by choice. It was by necessity, by need. We needed to look the way we look so we could survive, so we could still live, so we could, now we know who we are. We all connected. We can reproduce together. That's a beautiful thing. You know, we still us. It's not enough difference in us that we still the same people. We just inhabited different places and experienced different pressures that allowed us to become or to look the way that we look. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, man, I just wanted to end with that. And then look, I'll be back with more real talk. And I don't want to be talking about all this other stuff too much, man. This political stuff, it gets on my nerves, man. It's almost too far gone, if you ask me. I mean, we got a whole nutcase in office, and we got so many confused people that respond to these. See, this is the thing about rhetoric. You can't respond to rhetoric. You don't respond to it. And what you do, like if a lot of these Democratic people were smart, they would be talking about the stuff I'm talking about. Historical facts, relevance, things that override nonsense. You have to override bullshit, you know, with something that could collectively bring some resolve. Come on, man. But that's why I say, with everything that Trump doing, he's ensuring that we get reparations. We are going to get our reparations. Yeah. To punish anybody based off, like I said, this necessity to look the way that we look. This God, like I said, I always say we are men made in God's image. Every one of us. Because God made us all look the way that we look. Like I said, we don't look the way we look by choice. It's out of necessity. And God is that necessity. God creates that. And that's what those pressures represent. It represents natural selection, and it represents God. Like we couldn't evolve to be who we are without these markers, these certain things that denote, that make us become what we end up becoming, make us look the way we end up looking. To be dark in equatorial Africa, that's a survival thing. You need that dark melanin. You know, if you don't got it, you don't protect against the sun and still be able to take in that vitamin D. If you're not real light in Europe, you're going to develop rickets. You're not going to develop. The women are going to die having babies. Their pelvis is not open, not wide enough. The bones are not developed. You can't survive being super dark at that time without knowing what we know now with vitamins and stuff like that. You can't survive for hundreds and thousands of years safely at that time as a hunter-gatherer. No, you cannot. So those pressures was created to where we can all start to look the way the Europeans got white so they can take in that low density sunlight and convert it over to vitamin D. Same thing with the Asians. They developed the same thing. It was just in a different way. but it was for the same reasons. They needed to become light as well. As long as, I mean, as well as their eyes too. Their eyes developed the way they did for survival too. It was necessary. So that's how we have to start looking at each other. We have to start looking at each other like, you know what? He or she wouldn't look the way that he or she looked if it wasn't a need. That's why we have to start really looking at each other like we are all made perfect for a need. Not none of that bullshit that our ancestors came up with, especially the white ones. They came up with some wicked ass lies about our people and about the Asians. You know, all because of the environment that they inherited was so abundant with all these different crops to where they could just, you know, advance and to the point to where they had the most advanced armies and was, I mean, and then they just, I think that whole thing, just like with a lot of people say this is human nature, but I will say a lot of this stuff be European nature, you know, to be able to, because no one else inherited that land other than Europeans. And to behave the way the Europeans behave, that's a European distinction. So a lot of this human nature shit is not human nature. It's European nature. You know, because the way that Africans behave is it aligns with the land that we developed on. We can't do too much. If Africans did too much in that sunlight, they would have died. So that was interpreted as us being lazy. We would have died. We inherently knew what terrain we was on. We inherently knew our bodies. We inherently knew that we couldn't run around doing stuff all day lest we die, right? So just a lot of how we all behave, it's attached to where the land that we come from. So that warlike type of mentality, it started in Europe. A lot of us say it's all tribal, but y'all look at these documentaries and then y'all come back to this video. Tell me, you know, what y'all take on it, and then we go from there. But look, I'm about to be out. Y'all have a great night. Matter of fact, I'll be back with another one in a minute before it get too late.
Marlin speaks live, yeah, I'm saying what they hide. History uncensored, let the real survive. Yeah, it's truth over comfort, I don't pick no side. If it shake the room a little, let the truth collide. Cause it's Marlin speaks live, no script, no disguise. I don't sell no lies, just to monetize. Cause the past still breathing and it never dies. Yeah, it's Marlin speaks live, now the truth will rise. Yo, it's